Hunger is one of the best-known poems by the internationally acclaimed Indian English poet Jayanta Mahapatra. The poem is widely anthologized in most important modern Indian poetry collections and is the most widely analyzed piece among his works. The poem explores the informal child sex trade lurking in the social fabric, and is unique in its bold treatment of sexuality unlike a typical poem by him. Jayanta Mahapatra, born the 22nd of October 1928, is an Indian English poet. He is the first Indian poet to win a Sahitya Akademi Award for English poetry. He is the author of poems such as Indian Summer and Hunger, which are regarded as classics in modern Indian English literature. He was awarded a Padma Shri, the fourth highest civilian honor in India, in 2009. He returned the award in 2015 to protest against rising intolerance in India. The poem was originally a part of the poet's collection A Rain of Rights. In the poet's own words, the poem is based on a direct real-life experience. But it is not clear whether the poet as the protagonist was the visitor to the fisherman's daughter. The poem is an expression of the poet's loneliness as a youth, as Mahapatra had a disturbed childhood. The poem is notable for its directness in approaching the taboo topic of the sexual trade involving a father and his daughter. In the second line, the fisherman asks casually, "Will you have her?" However, the exact intention of the father is couched in subtle and ambivalent imagery, trailing his nets and nerves, and his white bone thrashing his eyes. A wide range of poetic devices are employed to bring out the mind's trappings in the flesh. The vivid imagery of the seashore in the poem depicts the circumstances that compel a woman to sell her body through prostitution. Some commentators have pointed out the brutal treatment of sexuality in the poem. Hunger. It was hard to believe the flesh was heavy on my back. The fisherman said, "Will you have her?" carelessly, trailing his nets and his nerves, as though his words sanctified the purpose with which he faced himself. I saw his white bone thrash his eyes. I followed him across the sprawling sands, my mind thumping in the flesh's sling. Hope lay perhaps in burning the house I lived in. Silence gripped my sleeves, his body clawed at the froth. His old nets had only dragged up from the seas. In the flickering dark his hut opened like a wound. The wind was I, and the days and nights before. Palm fronds scratched my skin. Inside the shack, an oil lamp splayed the hours bunched to those walls. Over and over the sticky soot crossed the space of my mind. I heard him say, "My daughter, she's just turned 15. Feel her. I'll be back soon, your bus leaves at 9. The sky fell on me, and a father's exhausted while. Long and lean, her ears were cold as rubber. She opened her wormy legs wide. I felt the hunger there. The other one, the fish slithering, turning inside. Summary. Hunger poem by Jayanta Mahapatra is about the idea of hunger that at the beginning of the poem is that of sex and sexual desire, but in the end, transforms into the hunger of stomach that leads the people to do anything. The poem consists of 4 stanzas having 5 lines each. There is no set rhyme scheme. The poet uses a number of literary devices to describe the events that led from one hunger, sexual, to the other, physical. The poet begins with the words, "It was hard to believe the flesh was heavy on my back." In the first reading, we may think that the poet has a heavy load or luggage on his back. However, the phrase "hard to believe" refers to something that is deep and profound. The poet here says that he couldn't believe that he had strong sexual desires at that time and was striving for sex which he couldn't believe. In the next line, we come to know that he is on a boat with a fisherman who says to him, "Will you have her?" Her here refers to the daughter of the fisherman whom he offers to the poet to have sex with her. It is quite strange and impossible, as no father ever offers his daughter to strangers for quenching their sexual thirst. While asking, the fisherman seems to be carelessly trailing his nets. But he was in no way careless. His nerves were stretched and white bone thrashing his eyes, meaning that he was quite curious for the poet to say yes, as he and his daughter have nothing to eat and are striving for food. The poet then followed him across the sprawling, spread sands. His mind was thumping in the flesh's sling, meaning that the poet's mind was throbbing and his skin was trying to support it like a sling or the bandage used for supporting a broken arm. The poet thought that his sin will be forgiven by burning the house that he lived in. The line shows that the poet was feeling quite guilty because of what he was going to do out of sexual desire. Then the silence of the poet was grabbing him, and it seemed that the silence has gripped his sleeves. It was perhaps his nerves that were stretching. The fisherman looked at his old nets, which had caught nothing but the foam from the sea. This last phrase can be attributed to the poet as well if we go deeper into its meaning. The poet imagines as if he had gathered nothing but sin by his sexual desires. The poet hears the fisherman says, "My daughter, she's just turned 15, feel her. I'll be back soon, your bus leaves at 9. 15 is the age when a girl is at her charm. Feel her means quench your sexual hunger by having sex with her." I'll back mean that the poet is now free to do with his daughter whatever he desires. The poverty and extreme hunger make the fisherman pimp his own daughter in exchange for some money or food. The way fisherman persuades the poet to have sex with his own daughter makes the poet feel as if the sky has fallen on him. The poet finds the girl who is young but malnutrised due to poverty. Seeing the poet, she opens her worm-like legs as she is very weak and young for the poet to make her his sex slave. At this stage, the poet knows for the first time about the other hunger that is opposite of his sexual hunger and which comes from an empty stomach. Fish slithering, turning inside depicts the churning movement that happens inside the stomach when we feel hungry. Source: https://englishsummary.com/hunger-poem-jayanta-mahapatra/